Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Divorce Coaching Podcast with me, Tom Nash, Mr. Divorce Coach. We've had a lot of guests on recently, and we've been talking about co-parenting and a whole different host of things. And a lot of our guests have been professionals or service providers that help to support people going through divorce or a separation. But I really wanted to start getting more into people's personal stories, people's experiences, what they've gone through, and even what we call the Divorce Coaching Podcast. Not everyone's married. Some people aren't married. Some people just separated. Some people never even lived together. So today I've got a really good friend of mine, and I know he doesn't mind me saying because we already asked him, a former client of mine, Sam. Hey Sam, how you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, buddy. So Sam has very kindly come along today to join us on the podcast and talk about his experience. Very, very unique and different experience, as everybody's always are. So Sam, the floor is yours, man. What was your story?
Right. Okay. So it's how to decipher it down into a short period of time. So my story started back in 2019. So a little bit about me now, just so you've got a little bit of context for everybody listening. I am a father of two. I have two children, one with a person who I'm going to talk about quite extensively throughout this podcast, and then the other with my current partner, who's a lady named Leah. We now live together. We have both the children together, and you'll see a little bit along the line how we've got to the stage where we are now. But you know, it's been a long process, but we're in a really good place now. We're really happy. We spend all the time together in the world as a family, and it's the perfect ending, really, which is nice, you know. So yeah, I'll take you back to 2019 where it all began. So you know, as you do, I was 23 at the time. Bit of a jack lad, you know, met somebody online and we started seeing each other for a little while. It was all very casual. And then she fell pregnant. At the time, there was a lot of misdirection and manipulation and lying. And I never got the truth out of her. She said she was pregnant. Then she said she wasn't, then she said she'd aborted it, then she said she'd miscarried. And this story went on for a good few weeks. In fact, up to the point where she was supposedly at the 12-week scan point. I asked at the time for effectively what was proof of life. I asked for a scan photo, and that never arose. And I called her bluff on it, basically, because I had no proof that this was actually a real thing, and I'd been misdirected so many times that I didn't know whether I was, you know, where I was stood, what position I was in. So it had already gotten very toxic at this point anyway. And I said plain and simply to her, if you can't provide me with, you know, evidence to back up what you're telling me, then how am I ever supposed to believe this? And she just sort of cut it off there, and we stopped talking. I moved on with life, got around to the November of that year, started a contract working in London, and met my now partner Leah. We started working together. You know, we had a very, very solid, good relationship, which started off as a friendship and quickly blossomed into what it is now, minus the bumps and speed humps along the road.
At this point, you and your ex partner that you've been seeing, that was done now. You guys didn't have
that was done and dusted. You know, she just never come back to me with, you know, anything when I'd requested proof of life, effectively. You know, for want of a better word. And that never come. So, you know, we stopped talking. You know, I took it as she was just trying to lie and misdirect me. And that was it. The end of story. Didn't hear anything from her. So moved on with life. Started working this contract in London. Met Leah. Me and Leah ended up together as a result of that. And then from that contract, we then went on to another contract. Still working together. At this point, we'd started properly going out with each other. We'd started living together. and then Leah fell pregnant. So this is around in sort of the March time at this point. So me and Leah very happily together, still working, planning for baby to come along and all the rest of it.
Yep.
Perfectly happy, nothing wrong at all with our relationship. Very, very happy. And then unfortunately I lost a significant member of my family in the June. And about 3 days later, I'm sat, with some friends, grieving and going through the process of losing a loved one. When all of a sudden he pulls up a social media page and says, I think you need to look at this, Sam. So I take his phone, have a look on there, and lo and behold, the lady that I was talking to previously and had gone through all the is she pregnant, isn't she pregnant scenario with, had announced that she'd had a baby back in the May time, and that she decided to not announce it because of various personal reasons, but she was pleased to introduce what I soon learned was Paige and my daughter to the world. So at that point, I sort of rang Leah up and said, there's a possibility here that I've got a child. Like, I don't know what to do. She came home, we sat and spoke about it, and she was like, well, look, you've got to go and find out, if this is your daughter, then it's your daughter. It is what it is, really and truly. So I contact my daughter's mum, my eldest daughter's mum, and say, is there something I need to know here? What's gone on? Like, what are you not informing me of? And end up going around there, seeing her and meeting my beautiful, amazing little daughter. So to begin with, it was going perfectly fine. I was seeing my daughter 3-4 nights a week, going around there for a couple of hours.
And she's how old at this point, sir?
So at this point, she was 4 months old, something around that sort of age.
Right.
So yeah, going around there. Leah was very, very proactive with it and very, very understanding of it, which, for a woman who at the time was pregnant and going through all the hormonal changes that they do during pregnancy, was just amazing. So she was very keen on coming around, meeting my daughter Paige, building a relationship with her, and was wholeheartedly, no, this is your daughter, she's going to be part of her life, so it's important that we build this relationship from a young age. So that all started fantastic. We started working our way through that, and then we get a few weeks down the line, and all of a sudden there starts being a few issues with mine and Leah's relationship, and Paige's mum starts trying to creep her way in a little bit more. In the end, it resulted in, unfortunately, me and Leah splitting up for a period of time. And I later found out down the line that Leah was being fed lots of lies and manipulation and misinformation from Paige's mum, which had resulted to like negative energy between me and Leah. And then as a result, us splitting up, unfortunately, for a period of time. And at that time, my sole focus was, I've got children now. I've got one already here and I've got one on the way. And that's a period in certainly a man's life where you have to very, very quickly grow up, and you very, very, very quickly have to adapt. But you know what? It's a very scary prospect when you first come into it, because you sit there and you think, money, housing, working, balancing work-home life. But it finds its own way of all working itself out and blending together, and you find all of that balance very, very quickly and very, very easily. So I'm working really hard to make sure that I've got somewhere for the girls, and that, I'm there for Paige, who is the only one that was born at this point, as much as possible, and I'm building this relationship with her. And then Paige's mum, out of the blue, tells me that she needs to leave her flat. She's going to be made homeless. Can I help her to find a property? Now, of course, no man wants to see his daughter without somewhere to live. So I do the fatherly thing. I try to help them. I try to support them. I offered to get a van, to get a team to move her out, to support her in relocating into a new property. So we get around to the day of moving, and I've got a team of people there, family and friends. I've got a big van. We get everything packed up from where she was living. We pack it in the van. We drive around to the property which she's told us she's moving into, and there's somebody living in the house. So I was a little bit surprised, threw it back at her and was a bit like, what's going on here? And she was like, oh, well, I've got the wrong property. This was one I looked at, sorry. I was like, right, okay. So let's go to the right house then. So she walks off down the road on the phone and turns around and goes, oh, we can't go there. We can't go there. And I was like, okay, what's happened? Like, she went, oh, there's been a break-in. All the back windows are smashed, and it's a police crime scene at the minute. And I was like, right, okay. She was like, yeah, the police are there at the minute, and we can't get in. I said, right, okay, if the police are there at the minute, like, let's go around there. Let's talk to the police officers that are there. Let's find out like a time scale of what's going on, like what they need to do, how we can secure the property, if we can move into any area of the property, or if we can start putting things in there, or so on and so forth. And she goes, oh, no, the landlord won't allow it. The landlord won't allow it. So, right, okay, all right, fair enough. If it's in the police's hands, it is what it is. I was like, but you're now in a situation where you've got nowhere to go and you've got nowhere to live. I was like, and I can't have that at all. And at the time, I'd acquired a property that I was doing up to move into, but it hadn't had any work done to it since 1986. So it was a little bit of a state, to say the least. So, the only option really at this point was for her and my daughter and her other children to relocate into this property for a short period of time. So phoned in a few favours from some friends, got the place sorted so it was livable for a short period of time. And said, so right, this gives then 2 weeks to your landlord to get the property sorted. We'll store the stuff here in this garage. So, rang a family member up, asked them to store some stuff for a short period of time. And I said, there we go. It was sorted. You can live in that house comfortably. You've got your essentials for a couple of weeks. The stuff's stored there. It's safe. It's dry. Let the landlord do their thing. Let them get the house sorted. And then you're sorted. You can get moved into there. Everything's, sweet. So we get 2 weeks down the line. And I said to her, what's going on? Like, is the landlord sorting the house out? What's happening? And she goes, oh, no, the landlord said she can't afford to get it done. All right, okay, but surely the insurance company will do it. And she went, oh, no, because it's been a burglary. She's saying the insurance company won't do it. And I said, all right, whatever. There's obviously been something that's gone wrong down the line. Somebody's not signed something off, ticked a box.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But I've got a building background. So I said, right, I'll source the glass, I'll source the windows, everything else. I'll get in there, I'll get them fitted, get the property secured, get it finished, cleaned up, and then just talk to the landlord about knocking a bit of money off the rent each month so that, I'm not even worried about that money coming back to me, but you've got that money back. It's gone back to somebody. The landlord hasn't just profited from all of this.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be fair. So she was like, oh, I'll speak to the landlord on it. So she supposedly goes and speaks to the landlord. Landlord goes on, and no, I can't do that. I can't do that. I don't know what I'm going to do. The property's just going to have to sit like that. Which, I've got not just a building background, but a property background as well. I know fully well that a empty property is just hemorrhaging money.
Yeah.
If somebody comes forward to you with an offer and says, instead of paying, yay, I'm going to pay this much, and that will knock off the works that I'm spending that are costing this, fantastic. It's one less thing for me to worry about. So I was a little bit puzzled by that, but I thought, hey, everybody's different, it's just one of them. So I said, right, okay, let's get you back looking for another property then. I'll help you out. I'm happy to go down as guarantor. Whatever we've got to do, let's get you somewhere that's suitable for you and the kids, that's near your family, that's near the kids' school, that is an ideal home, because
You're still living in your place at the moment.
yeah, still living in my place at this point, but my place is, you know, a 1986 museum, effectively.
Yeah.
The complete other side of where her kids' school were, you know, a good 20-minute drive away. So it wasn't a suitable location, you know, and me and her weren't together, you know, we weren't a thing. I was just trying to support the mother of my child, because at that point she was bringing up and she was raising my child. You know, and I felt as a dad that was my obligation to make sure my child had a safe and steady home. So, sorry, backtrack onto where we were. So I said to her, right, let's start working through and let's try and find you a property in the area that you want, by the kids' school, and somewhere that you can settle and make a home. So we start looking for a few places, contact a couple of landlords, contact a couple of estate agents. She's not having any joy at all. For whatever reason, they don't want to accept her, and it's going on and on and on. By this point, it's just before Christmas, and you know, I said to her, "It's not fair that you and the kids can all of a sudden be upheaved just before Christmas and moved off somewhere else." I said, "So stay here until Christmas, get Christmas out of the way, get into the new year, let the kids enjoy their Christmas, and then, you know, we can find you somewhere to live." And at this point, you know, I'm living downstairs, she's upstairs, but it's, you know, it's not an unhealthy environment. You know, there's a few odd things going on, but it's all sort of ticking along. I'm coming home, I'm spending time with my daughter, and I'm spending time with the other kids, because they'd, you know, grew quite a liking towards me at this point. And it's all ticking along, you know. By this point, my second daughter, who is Esme, had been born as well. So my time is split between spending time with Paige and seeing Esme, and I'm back and forward, spending time, as much time as possible with my daughters.
And you and Esme's mum are back together at this point? So
yeah, so Esme's mum is an amazing woman called Leah, and me and her are back together, and I'll get into that a little bit more when we get a bit further on in the story. But she's an amazing woman, Leah. Totally opposite of you know, Paige's mum, and a real, you know, knight in shining armor, effectively, for me. And she's been amazing. So we get just the other side of the new year, and I said to her, right, you know, it's time for you to start looking for a home, you know, and finding somewhere for you to settle down and you to live with the kids that's up by the school. And this was the first sign of things going south and things turning, you know, very, very quickly from all happy and you know, as it was, to a very, very toxic and very, very unhealthy environment. And her simple words to me were, "No, you've moved me in here. You want me gone. You find me somewhere." And I was really thrown back by that. You know, I'd done my utmost to support her and to support my daughter, and to make sure that they had somewhere to live. You know, I'd spent an absolute fortune on her at Christmas. And this is when certain comments started to twig in my mind as to things that had been happening in the run up to Christmas that I hadn't really thought anything of.
Right.
But it was only at this point when I started to really realise what had been going on in that lead up, as soon as she'd gotten her foot in the door at my house. So there'd been a few comments in the past, you know, and it was mainly sort of financial at that point. When she moved into the house, I said to her very simply, you know, all you have to do is worry about getting food for the kids. Don't worry about any bills, you know, don't worry about TV, don't worry about internet, don't worry about gas, electric, you know, whatever, all the bills, don't worry about that. Just worry about making sure that the kids have got dinners and stuff like that. I'll sort everything else out. She was still getting a substantial amount of money through at this point. And 2 weeks before Christmas, she turned around to me and went, "Oh, well, I'm not going to be able to get the kids anything for Christmas. You'll have to give me some money." I was a little bit thrown back at that point, and I should have seen that as the start of the deterioration of the relationship at that point. And I was a bit like, okay, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to buy Paige something, and I buy the kids another, like, all a little something for themselves. But you've got to buy the kids presents if you want to get them presents. Like, she went, oh well, I can't afford to, so you'll have to give me the money for it. That's a bit thrown back, but again, being a bit too much of a soft touch, just made sure that she had some money so she could get the kids some presents. But yeah, as I said, I get round to January, and she makes this comment. And at this point, the relationships really started getting nasty. And when I say relationship, I mean the fact that we were living in the same premises. Yeah. There wasn't a relationship there, but we were both residing in the same place. She began becoming very abusive, and abuse isn't ever something that anybody ever sees happening to a big, burly, bearded man. But having been there and having been in a situation, it does. And it's not necessarily in the way that people view abuse. When people say abuse, they just think getting slapped, punched, hit, physical abuse. But there's a lot more ways of abuse, and a lot of very damaging ways of abuse, that certainly I've now learned that there's a lot of men out there who are subject to it. Her biggest ploy was that she was very, very emotionally and mentally abusive. I'm somebody that's always needed a lot of assurance. I always doubt myself very much, and I always think that I can do more and I can achieve more. And I thrive off of somebody saying to me, yeah, you've done really well on that, Sam, congratulations, you're smashing it, or whatever it is. And she very quickly picked up on that. And her way of trying to break me down was to constantly degrade me, to tell me how bad I was, to tell me what I wasn't doing, to tell me that I was wrong and that I was this bad person, and I was out of order for this and I was out of order for that, and numerous obscenities that I'm not going to say on here. I don't wish to tarnish your hearers.
There's a little box when I upload it to YouTube that says if it's got explicit language, so go for it.
But yeah, some real awful things that she would say to me, and she really started trying to work on grinding me down and making me so low that she could really manipulate me and make me do whatever I wanted her to do. And to a degree, it works. But then when she started seeing that wasn't working, she then started trying to emotionally abuse me. So I am a person who has an amazing relationship with my parents. Like, they're fantastic. And even more so since all of this has gone on. We're a very, very close-knit family, and we're a very, very supportive family. And she knew that, and she could see that. So her way of trying to break me down even more was to isolate me away from my family and to drive wedges in between me and my family. And the two biggest ones, which I have two of the best relationships with, being my mum and my brother. And the way she did this was by faking other accounts and pretending that they were me, and sending some horrific messages, some things that I could barely even think of, let alone actually put down on a device, sort of thing. And turning around and telling my mum and my brother and any member of family that would give her a second to listen, that I was doing all sorts of horrific things, and that I didn't care about my daughter, and I never wanted her, and I wished her to be aborted, and some absolutely horrific things. And it really drove a wedge between the relationship that I had with my family. And this abuse kept going on for months and months and months, and it got to the point where I didn't want to see anybody, I didn't want to be with anybody. I was isolating myself off a lot. I wasn't talking to anybody, and a few people who'd managed to see that were starting to get very, very concerned about me. And I'd sort of sat and spoke to my dad a few times about what was going on and what was happening. I was leaving the house as early in the morning as I could, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't then coming home until 10, 11 o'clock at night, because I knew she wouldn't be awake I knew she'd have gone to bed and been asleep. So I'd sneak in the door, I'd lay down on the sofa, I'd get a few hours sleep, I'd get myself up again, I'd go out. I was even like showering and eating around a friend's house because I just didn't want to be there.
Avoid.
And I'd said to my dad that all this was going on and that I was really, really unhappy and felt really low, and I just didn't know what to do with the situation. And I was stuck with her in my house, having complete control over me, over my daughter, over what I did, because I had nowhere to go. And my dad was like, you're more than welcome here. You can always come here. And I was like, I know that, but if I leave my house, I've left my house. Like, what do I do? I can't give up my house. Like, well, I don't know what to do here. And I'd finished up at work early one day because I really wanted to see Paige. So I'd come home with the intention of spending a few hours with my daughter, and keeping that bond and that relationship going. And I knew that my dad was going to pop round and drop me a few bits off for Paige. So I'd left the front door ajar slightly. And I'd gotten home, taken my work boots off, gone and had a wash and that. Coming out, walked into the kitchen, and I was just met with a barrage of abuse from her, with the kids in the next room. Screaming, shouting, throwing things at me, punching me in the arm, calling me every name under the sun. And I'm not an aggressive person at all. I don't like confrontation. If I can talk a situation down, I'll talk a situation down. But there was no doing that in this scenario or the other scenarios where she was abusive towards me. And during this time, my dad had turned up at the front door, had seen it open ajar, and had heard the shouting. So he'd come in, and he'd stood in I've got a hallway for my stairs before you get to the kitchen, and he stood in the hallway and he'd watched and listened to what was going on. And as quick as that, she turned around and went, "Oh, hi, Sam's dad, how are you?" in a perfectly nice tone, completely different from what she'd just been speaking to me like. And that was the start of people realizing what I was going through at this point. And my dad just turned around and said, stop the bravado. I don't need to see it. I've just witnessed what's been going on. And I now know that what Sam's been telling me is the reality. This is unacceptable. You're not going to be like this with my son. You've got a month. You need to find somewhere to live, and you need to go, because you can't be here. This is not good, So he'd given her a month to find a place. And even with all the abuse and everything else that was going on, it was still in my mind that this is my daughter's mum. She's got my daughter. She needs to be in somewhere. She needs to live somewhere. It needs to be a good neighbourhood. It needs to be near the school and all the rest of it. So I'd rung a friend up of mine who has got a number of properties, and I said to him, "Look, can you help? Like, I don't mind, whatever it is. Like, can you support me on this? If I've got to pay you some money up front, if I've got to go down as guarantor, whatever I've got to do, can you help me?" And he said, "Look, Sam, I was looking at buying 2 properties. There's one that meets what your daughter's mum is after, and is 2 minutes away from the school. I'll buy it and she can move into there." And I was like, "Thank you very much. Like, you're an absolute godsend. Please do. Like, let's get it sorted." So he said, "Not a problem." He said, "Just give me a bit of time and a bit of understanding. We're still obviously at this point during COVID, so solicitors weren't the quickest in the world."
No, they weren't.
He said, "So it might take a little while to get the purchase agreement and that through, but give me a bit of time." He said, "No questions asked. She's got it. Like, it's fine. It's for your daughter. It's sorted." So he started purchasing this property. We got a month down the line, and they were just trying to finalise a few bits and get the last bit sorted on this purchase. And she'd, at this point, arranged to go and move in with her granddad for a temporary period of time until the house was ready for her to move into. So she goes and moves into the house. And I said to her, can we come to some sort of arrangement? I want to see my daughter. I want to spend time with my daughter. It's really important that I have a substantial amount of time to build a relationship with her, and so she understands that I'm her dad and we can spend quality time together. So she was like, yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem. So she moves out, moves into her granddad's house, and even then, I still helped her move bits out. At this point, I had my house back. Now, there's a lot more to the house coming back, but we're not going to go into too much details on that because it's a little bit irrelevant. But it wasn't in the best of condition, and as a result of it not being in the best of condition, there came out a lot more details of the conditions that not just my daughter, but her children were being raised in. And moves into the house with her granddad, and she said to me, "Yeah, look, I understand you want to have your daughter, you want to spend time with her, all the rest of it. So that's fine. You can have your daughter every weekend, pick her up Friday after you've finished work, and then can you drop her back Sunday morning so I can spend some time with her at the weekend as well?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I'm happy with that. I get 2 nights and a full day with her. I'm happy. That's fine. We can go out for the day on the Saturday, and the 2 evenings we can spend one evening just me and my daughter, and then the other evening, we can go and see family or whatever." So we get round to the first weekend of me ever having her on my own, and pick her up on Friday, go home, have a great evening with my daughter, put her down to bed, and she has a bit of a lay-in the morning, bless her, because she's a bloody good sleeper, which I'm very grateful for. And it gets around to about 11 o'clock. We've woken up, we've had breakfast, we're getting ready to go out for the day. I think we're going to go to the farm or something. And all of a sudden, my phone starts getting bombarded with text messages saying, "Bring my daughter back, bring my daughter back, bring her back now, I'm ringing the police. I want her back now, you're not to have her, I want her back." The trouble was, at this point, my daughter's coming up for a year-old. And I still was not on the birth certificate, despite asking, despite offering to pay the £90 for the birth certificate to be altered. She'd never done it. So I have no legal right over my daughter. So I was like, right, what's wrong? Why can't I have her? "Oh, I don't want you having her, this, that, and the other." So I was like, all right, whatever, I really don't want you ringing the police and saying I've got my daughter without your permission, so I'll have to just bite the bullet and bring her back. So drop her back to Paige's mum's, and say goodbye to my daughter and all the rest of it, and go home. And just more and more grief coming off of her, more and more abusiveness. She's saying, "Oh no, I'm not going to let you see your daughter," and all the rest of it. And I was really, really getting to the end of my tether. I was getting stressed out. My mother and my brother weren't believing still what was going on at this point. And I was getting to the point where, quite frankly, I was ready just to go. I don't know what I wanted to do, but I couldn't cope with it anymore. And the night before, I'd spoken to my nan on this evening, and I'd said to her, "I'm really stressed out about this. I don't know what to do. I can't cope with this anymore. I think I need to go away for a bit of time and have a bit of time to myself, because this is all getting on top of me." And I was like, "I'm going to wait until the weekend. I'm going to see what's going on, and then I'll make a decision as to whether I'm going to go away for a couple of weeks or not." So the next day, I'm on a course, and I'm halfway through the course, and my phone's ringing in my pocket, and I'm trying to ignore it because I'm trying to listen to the tutor and do my course and that. But it's ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. So I'm like, right, sorry, can I take this call? So I drop out the room, answer the phone, and it's Paige's mum's dad. Sorry, it's very difficult to do without names. So yeah, it's Paige's mum's dad. We got it?
Paige's granddad.
Paige's granddad. That's an easier way of putting it. There we go. So he rings and he says, "Have you heard from Paige's mum?" And I said, "No. Why would I have heard from Paige's mum?" And he says, "Oh, well, she's moving into your friend's property today." And I said, "Well, that would be a bit hard, as the purchase hasn't gone through on it yet." And he was like, "Right, okay, we've got a problem then, because she's dropped the kids off here and she's disappeared, and her phone's switched off, and all of her social media accounts have been deactivated." He was like, "I'm gonna have to ring the police." I was like, "Right, okay, all right, I'm on my way around, like I'll be with you shortly." So I went back in, said to the tutor, "I'm really sorry, I've got to go and deal with this." So he's like, yeah, no, like, not a problem. You know, do what you got to do. It's your kid at the end of the day. So go round to Paige's granddad's house, and about 10 minutes later, the police arrive, and we sit and talk about this all. And they asked me what's been going on, and I explained the situation, and I explained what she'd been like with me, and I explained why I'd been forced to then have to ask her to leave the house. And, you know, they then start asking about various different bits and pieces. And the last footage of her, she'd gotten on a train and she disappeared off. And it ended up being the police having a look for her, and it was actually one of her friends that found her, and she'd gone off to try and start a new life somewhere, basically, as it turned out. But in doing so, had just upped and abandoned her children. And at the time, the police said to me, you know, look, there's your daughter. The grandparents are quite happy for you to have her and to look after her. You know, they've said you're a dad and you're more than capable of doing so. They've got no concerns, and they're more than happy for you to do so, and that being with you is the best place for her.
Yeah.
So they passed her across to me, and that was on the 28th of April 2021. And I've had my daughter ever since then. I went through a very, very long court process to get the right things in play to make sure that my daughter was protected. It was a very stressful situation. I came out the best way, you know, with the best opportunities for my daughter and the best chances in life ahead for her. She now resides with me permanently. In amongst all of this going on, Leah, who's now my current partner and Esme's mum, was amazing. Was it so helpful, was so supportive. And what started off as us just trying to co-parent and just trying to make the best job of it we could, being two young parents who had had a whole whirlwind of situations and, you know, things that go on, ended up falling back in love with each other, you know, and a whole host of things coming out that had caused the breakup in the first place. And it just went from there, really. And we now live together. We have done for, I don't know, 6 months now. And Leah's just amazing. You know, in what was a very, very tough situation, she was a young mum. It was a very difficult split up. She'd gone from giving me my first daughter to all of a sudden I had another daughter that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
And she's taken Paige on as her own. She loves her as her own. She treats her as her own. And even the professionals have turned around and said, unless you actually knew the story, you would never know that Paige isn't her birth daughter. She's an amazing woman, and our relationship now is stronger than ever and better than ever. You know, like any relationship, it has its up days, it has its down days, but we're a unit, we're together, we support each other. You know, we sing from the same song sheet when it comes to the children, and having two children that may as well be twins because they're that close together is not an easy task, I can tell you that much. But it's been one hell of a journey. I have learned so much about myself and what I'm capable of and what I can take on. You know, they say that you gain a whole new love and level of strength when you become a dad. And by God, is it true? You know, there's situations where I would have thought I would crumble and fall apart, and I just haven't. I found a way of overcoming it. I found a way of working through it, you know, and something that I've always struggled with until I started working with you is to talk about these things.
Thank you very much. Little plug there.
And you know, like I've said to you many times in the past, Tom, you know, you helped me on my journey. You helped me through all of this. And as much as you tell me every time that, you know, I get out on my own, you supported me, you helped me to realise that by opening up and looking at my story and by about it and by helping us on the, it's given me a whole nother outlook on nothing world now. If I want to set my mind to something now, I know I'm more than capable of doing it. That I'm able to do it.
Yeah.
Because nothing more. If you think something's going wrong, and that's my biggest piece of advice for any man out there. I think that's such a key thing. So that's me.
I think my internet cut a little bit there.
Did it?
It did a little bit, actually. But I got the gist, and I know where you're coming from. I was going to ask you, I'm not going to talk about the details of court stuff and things like that. One, I'm not supposed to, and two, it's not, the details of it aren't relevant. But I wanted to ask you, the experience that you had to go through, did you feel the court system and even the pre-court systems, or even the processes before and in court, do you feel that they were supportive to your situation and you as a dad particularly? Because one thing I read a lot of different articles and talk to loads of different people about different experiences, and one thing that comes up quite a lot is that the courts are biased to dads, or the law's biased. The courts are biased against dads, and the law's against dads. The law and the courts aren't. They're actually written and delivered equally. But what I was interested to know is your experience. Did you feel the process was hard?
So the court, one was fun, very open-minded, and I can't go.
Sam, I was just wanting to know about, from the perspective of courts and before courts and the processes that lead up to all of that, and those services that are around it. I do a lot of reading, a lot of research, talk to a lot of different people. There's a lot of comments that go out around the courts are against dads, against men, or that there's gender bias in the law. And personally, I feel that the law and the courts isn't written in a gender biased way. But I'm just wondering if your experience of the process to get to that stage, if you felt that was at all biased against you. I mean, I know that your situation is slightly different for a lot of others, because one of the first things you had to fight for was to actually get on the birth certificate as well, which is a big thing, I know. But did you feel that any of the steps in the process to actually be recognised and equal as a parent and as a dad, did you feel that any of that was against you, or did you feel supported? Like, what was your experience?
So when it came down to the courts, I feel the courts themselves are very fair. They're very understanding. They are very, very. My final court hearing was fantastic, and the judge actually congratulated me on my process and what I'd been through, and had said that I, without sounding too big-headed, that I should be an example to men and to how to go for certain applications for their children. So the court themselves, no complaints about, absolutely brilliant. And I was absolutely cacking it before walking into court. I was terrified, because I've been in courts before, but when it's to do with your children, it's a whole different ballgame. It's the real make or break of life, effectively. And it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. But the court was brilliant, through each step of going into the court, from, sitting there waiting to actually go in, the guys that bring you in and sit you down and, sign you in and everything else. They were brilliant. They were so calming. They were so chatty, and, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Focus on what's at heart, what you're going there for. When I got into the actual court itself, really, really good. Like, broke things down, talked through it with me. The court system was absolutely fantastic. The systems beforehand in place, the mediation, absolutely fantastic. They were really, really good, and really, really supportive. CafCass, the one of the people I was involved with there, fantastic, really supportive, really understanding. The systems aren't against men. Unfortunately, within the systems, there are some dinosaurs. And as far as some of the dinosaurs are concerned, a child should be with their mum, regardless of the situation. That is what they wholeheartedly believe, and as long as it is, and it is tough, I was told by an official when I spoke through the abuse that I'd been through, and I've only briefly sort of outlined some of it today, but that I was a big lad. It wasn't that bad. I can get on with it.
Mhm.
Now, when you've been through what I went through, that's not what you want to be hearing when you're getting ready to go into court to fight for your child. But they were the only one, Everybody else that I encountered was very supportive and was brilliant. Unfortunately, within the systems, there are just still some dinosaurs that are very set in their ways, very set in their beliefs, and they will not turn against you because they can't. If you're ticking the right boxes and you're doing the right things,
Right.
then they can't say anything. But they'll try and trigger you. They'll try and push you towards thinking yourself that you're not doing the right thing, and that you should be letting your child be with their mum, regardless of the situation. The system is 10 times better than what it has been in the past.
Yeah.
You just have to be prepared to walk into a dinosaur and to face some criticism, unfortunately. But it's like that in all aspects of life, and that everything from the social aspect, like the social services aspect, they are so much more supportive towards men now. CafCass are so much more supportive towards men. And the court systems I can't fault. So there's a lot of horror stories out there, and trust me, I was the lad sat there every single night reading through them, absolutely cacking it, not finding many wins, And as I've had conversations with you, I intend to, when the time's right for me and for my family, to shout from the rooftops about my win, because I think it's so important for men to see that you do have a chance out there, and that you can get what's right for your child if you have your child's best intentions at heart. And it's about putting your child first. Even up until the final court date, I was still wanting my child to have contact with their mum. I was pushing that and pushing that and pushing that, despite the fact I was getting met with no response back and no commitment, no want to see her child. I was intent on it happening because I thought it was so important. But what is more important for Paige is consistency and stability, not just for her life and her routine, but for her own mental well-being as well. She's a beautiful 2-year-old little girl now, and her long-term memory is now starting to come into play.
Yeah.
If she has a mother that is dipping and diving out of her life and into her life when suits her and when pleases her, that's not going to be good for Paige's mental health. She has a mum, and her mum is Leah. Her mother is somebody else, and there's the very good old saying of anyone can be a father, but it takes a real man to be a dad. The same goes when it comes to being a mother and being a mum. And a mum is somebody that is there and supports their child and raises their child, and lifts them up and praises them when they've won something, and sits there and cuddles them and lets them cry when they're upset over something. Being a mum is a massive, massive title. Being a mother just means that you've given birth, and Paige's mum is Leah. And that's the plain and simple from it for me. But the system isn't against us men anymore. It can support us and it can get the right results.
Well, that's why I wanted you on here, because there are the wins out there. There are the positive stories, and unfortunately, they don't get enough airtime, as it were, or they don't get. Everybody goes to the horror stories. Not very many listen to the good ones, or really go looking for the good ones and latches onto that negativity. So that's why I wanted to have you on it. There was two final things I wanted to ask you, 2 final questions. You're right, you were kind of answering one a minute ago, but I think my internet was kicking out a little bit. So there's 2 things I wanted to ask you, which was, what's the one biggest thing you learned about yourself in terms of growth? How did that help you be a better version of you, generally speaking, overall? And what's the one biggest single piece of advice you would give to any other dad that is facing a potentially similar or not too dissimilar situation?
So my biggest thing, my biggest lesson from all of this has been my belief in myself. As big-headed and as egoist as it sounds, I now truly believe I am capable of whatever I put my mind to, and I think once you've been through a situation like this, it truly opens up your eyes to what you are capable of, and what you can do. And just how good of a person you can be, just what you can achieve, and what lengths you'll go to provide for your family, for your children, for your partner, and all the rest of it. So my biggest lesson for all of this has been self-belief, and has been to open up and talk about it, and share my experiences, share my situation, and let people know that they're not alone, because there's a lot of blokes out there that feel like they are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of us out here that have been through situations like it, which sort of really leads on to your second question of what advice would I give to other dads in similar situations, or situations where they can relate to me. And that is reach out, talk to people, ask for advice, ask multiple people for advice. Yes, you can turn to a solicitor, but a solicitor's going to tell you the facts. People such as yourself, such as people that have gone through the situation, social services, CafCass, all there to help you and to support you. And when it comes down to a situation like mine, there's no such thing as enough information.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as enough positivity, and there's no such thing as enough support. And the more of them three things that you can go out and reach and get, the stronger of a position that you're in.
Yeah.
And services such as yours, Tom, are fantastic, because they allow you a non-biased, like opinionated place to talk, and when people look at like life coaching or therapists or anything else, there's always the Hollywood view of sitting on a chair
on a yellow chair. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. But sitting there in a room, trapped, not being able to get away from it if you need to take 5 minutes to recollect your thoughts. And the reality of it is very, very different. The reality, I believe, of working with you is going to be the making of me, and is going to allow me to grow and develop and understand myself so much more. And I now can't encourage people enough to reach out and to talk and to open up, especially for men. We don't like to talk to each other. We don't like to open up to each other. Since I've started telling people that I worked with you, and I worked through and talked about my emotions and talked about what I was locking away and, what I was dealing with, all of a sudden they turn to me more now, and they talk to me and they open up to me a lot more. And it's because they realize you don't have to play this, I'm a big macho man role. You can open up, you can talk about your emotions, and it takes a lot to do so. It makes you a big man to do so.
Absolutely does. And like you just said about like not having to sit in that kind of Freudian interview style, like when me and you used to have your sessions, we used to meet outside, go for a walk, didn't we? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, weren't sitting there on the couch like making notes. I'm looking at you under my glasses, wearing a flowing hemp dress or anything. Was I? That's the other thing when people say about like talking about therapists, counsellors, coaches, whatever. I think a lot of guys anticipate that, and I've had a lot of gentlemen that have said this to me, and I've actually got there's some colleagues, some female colleagues that I've spoken to that, and also some lawyers as well that have always said that there's a lot of guys that their automatic go-to, and what we're also taught in mainstream media and TV, they're going to go see someone to deal with some personal development, some emotional well-being, and it's automatically portrayed as typically a lady in their 50s or older, etc., in that kind of interviewed therapy room style environment. It doesn't have to be like that. Like,
not at all.
like you
Not
said
the
earlier,
amount of times.
like you
The
said
amount of
earlier,
times we met up and we'd be walking, and all of a sudden it'd be an hour and a half later, and we're like, "Oh my god, where the hell has time gone?"
Yeah.
Because we're just walking and talking, And it does. It helps you unlock another part in your brain that just allows you to get everything off your chest. You then feel invincible, for want of a better word. So yeah, my biggest piece of advice, like I said, knowledge, support, and talk about it.
walk and talk. Awesome. Well, mate, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time. I know that the girls are asleep. It's a Wednesday evening for both of us. So I will let you go, but I just
No
want to
worries.
thank you very much for sharing your story. This will be getting shared far and wide on the YouTube podcast, across my Instagrams, etc., and so on and so forth. But for anybody that's watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, please do continue to like, comment, and share. Got any specific questions for Sam or anything for me or anything you want to talk about, or if you've got one of your own stories you want to come and share some positive outcome and how you work through something, just as Sam has done today, like, get in touch with us. We want to hear other people's stories, and so we can share them with other people, so that we can all realize that we're not alone, and there's other ways and approaches to this, and we can all help each other. So, mate, thanks again for your time, really appreciate it, and I will see you very soon anyway.